Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Olivia, and I'm so glad to welcome all of you to today's gathering of Face to Face with Elephants, our very last Living One series of 2025. For those of you who don't already know, Living One is the Kerulos Center for Nonviolence's webinar series, now in its 6th year. The Kerulos Center for Nonviolence is a nonprofit dedicated to generating deep commitment and connection with the world and within ourselves, dissolving divides between human, plant, and animal, mind and body, science and spirit, and self and nature. Through teachings, practice, and community, Kerulos catalyzes a shift in how we live, relate, and belong, because healing begins when we remember that we were never apart. This special Living One series, Face to Face with Elephants, celebrates elephants as individuals with diverse, insightful speakers who describe a particular elephant they have known and the psychological depths they have witnessed and journeyed together. In these unique Living One discussions, we plunge into human and elephant psyches and the transformative journey they experienced when living and connecting beyond species bounds. Thank you for joining us today. We are thrilled to welcome Deke Weaver to Living One this morning. Deke's multidisciplinary work has been presented in venues such as PBS, Sundance Film Festival, Channel 4 in the UK, the New York Video Festival at Lincoln Center, Chicago Humanities Festival, Berlin Video Festival, the Moth, 21C Museum Hotels, the Edinburgh Film Festival Fringe, livestock pavilions, backyard sheds, forests, prairies, nightclubs, and living rooms. A Guggenheim Fellow and Creative Capital grantee, Weaver is currently a professor at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, with appointments in the School of Art and Design, the Department of Theater, the Department of Dance, and faculty affiliation with the Initiative in Holocaust, Genocide, and Memory Studies. Before we begin today, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that we are all currently on various Indigenous lands. I am currently on the ancestral homelands of the Council of the Three Fires, which includes the Ojibwa, Ottawa, and Potawatomi. This land exists also as a place of trade with other Indigenous communities, including the Ho-Chunk, Miami, Menominee, Sauk, and Meskwaki. The Kerulos Center for Nonviolence is located on the homelands of the grizzly bear, takelma, daku betite, coyote, coho salmon, golden eagle, and gray wolf. Finally, we ask that all of us participate today with full respect and attention to each other in the spirit of peace and wisdom that Living One seeks to foster. And I'm very glad to welcome Izzy and Deke. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Olivia. And Deke, welcome. We're absolutely delighted to have you. I wondered if you could start off. So many of your connections are related to performance and dance and the arts and humanities. How did that lead you into this deep engagement with understanding elephants?
Well, the connection with animals in the natural world is probably, it's something I grew up with. So my dad, some of my earliest memories are of him going through his doctorate at the University of Michigan. And so he's an ornithologist, natural resources management person. And so we had moments in Minnesota where he was working for a county park system, and they were trying to reestablish trumpeter swans that had been extirpated out of the state of Minnesota. And so they were trying to bring them back by going out to Montana and Red Rock Lakes, where E.B. White's Trumpet of the Swan starts, and and bringing back literal trumpeter swan eggs back to this is a county around Minneapolis. And so it started there for sure. And at a certain point, we had just moved here from New York, and suddenly on the tenure track, it became this thing of like just thinking about the possibility of, I've been doing performance for a while. It just felt like a really coming out of a like a grad program that was about photography, but they were really encouraging you to try installation, performance, different things. And so getting here, after coming from New York, for those of you who don't know, Urbana-Champaign is kind of out in the corn. It's a big university, but it's in a pretty isolated place. I mean, it's like 2.5 hours south of Chicago, so not that isolated, but it's just trying to figure out something that could kind of capture different kinds of imaginations. And it felt like a lot of the pieces I've been doing had there was always an animal involved, and it might be uh, it might be like a sort of magic realist sort of thing, where a pheasant comes in and starts talking to somebody in northern Minnesota out on the ice. A puppy gets run over. I mean, something that is just there's pivotal points in these different stories, and so it felt like I was feeling like live performance with the inundation of screens. It felt like live performance, physical live performance where you're there with an audience was in danger. And it felt like so much of the natural world was in danger. And they both felt like, to me, for both of these things, this cultural thing and this sort of out by yourself, out in the woods, out on the lake, wherever it's going to be. These were both places where I had these transformative experiences, big, wide open, sort of like things that you read about, but you don't really know it until you're having it or feeling it.
Yeah.
And so it felt like there is something in there, and just framing it. So framing this whole thing called the unreliable bestiary, or bestiary, depending on which dictionary you're reading, and it's making a project, a performance for each letter of the alphabet, each letter represented by an endangered animal or habitat. And it's not using specific species, it's using sort of I guess you might say like nursery rhyme sort of titles. So it's instead of like, a very particular monkey, there's like over 130 monkey species, just saying monkey, it's like an Aesop's fable title.
Yeah.
So the first couple of them were all what some people call charismatic megafauna, just to kind of get people in the tent and sort of interested in the thing. And then it's we've done 6 of them because they take a lot of research and a lot of emotional energy. So when I get done researching some of these things, I just want to read something really simple for a while because it's just some of it's, as all of you know, some of it's pretty dark. And so the first one we did was monkey, and then we did elephant, then we did wolf, bear, tiger, and the last one we did is cetacean, the whale. And the reason instead of saying whale, we couldn't do whale, we already did wolf. W is taken, so we had to, so we went with cetacean. And the next one we're working on is forest. So that is what's on the plate. So, but yeah, we're kind of like, and these things are often in site specific, meaning you're doing the show in a place that's not a traditional theater. You're doing in a show that a place that might reflect the human animal story of that particular animal.
Right.
Yeah, and so it's I've been going on. Go ahead, Izzy. What else? What else
Well, you mentioned that unreliable bestiary, and I mean, I've seen is it a TED Talk version? I've seen one version of the elephant that was online, and it is just incredibly powerful, incredibly moving. And sorry about the cats.
That's great.
And I'm very aware of the amount how harrowing it must have been. It's harrowing for them. They're obviously upset about this. How harrowing it must have been to research the elephants as well as wolves, cetaceans. I mean, the painful research that you must have done. But let's look into the elephant one. How did researching elephant impact you personally?
Um, I don't know. I guess it's just sort of I mean, one of the things I talk about in the elephant show is sort of and this is sort of just dipping my toes into some of this of just the different kinds of ethical decisions that are going on and feeling my own sort of like little 5-year-old sort of like I want to go ride an elephant, you know? And then digging in a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more of just sort of like this weird balancing act of how it's affecting just working people, you know? So it's like working people and working elephants. So it's like the example is really strong in Thailand, and so at a certain point, um, well, elephants had been worked with for well over a century, where the mahouts it's all part of like a timber. It's a timber industry, and so the mahout is the keeper of the elephant and is their companion for their like traditionally for their whole life, and the elephants are super smart and really kind of we were just talking about the ballet, very poised and what they're able to do within a forest, a very tight, dense forest of like taking down a tree, kind of lifting up the trunk and being able to kind of like walk their way through the forest with the trunk and being able to like walk across like a bridge that is made of a log, and just balancing across while it's carrying a mahout on its back and a big, huge tree, And so this was something that went on for a very long time. And it's not just the elephant culture of the elephants that are, well, all the working elephants in Thailand are considered livestock. They're rated as livestock just as like our cows and sheep and goats. But the the culture of not only the elephants but also the mahouts, this father to son for generations. Then at a certain point, what happened in Thailand, it was sort of like the last straw was there was a mudslide because of deforestation that took out an entire village. A lot of people died, and they were like, that's it. They banned forest logging. They banned it. And so all of a sudden you had all these elephants and their mahouts without work, and they were literally going into the streets of Bangkok and other cities just begging. And so it's like you got an elephant literally with a tin cup. And so they would, the mahouts would be going to get, bananas so people could pay to feed the elephant a banana, on the streets. And the stories are pretty intense for both the mahout and the elephant. And so at a certain point, there was this, you know, the government, I'm not sure which part of the government, but they started something called the I forget what it's called, but it's this elephant center that is basically it's similar to like in the UK, like the coal mining places where you go there and you have the ex-coal miners that are taking you down, and it's just become this living museum sort of. And so it's like so you can go there as a tourist and learn to be a mahout. And so you pay a certain amount of money, they feed you, they put you up, and then you have an elephant for the week, and you're going out with a mahout every morning to get the elephant, and then you kind of, walk around a little bit with the elephant and just do, you'll end up going into the water with the elephant. There's bathing, there's all this stuff that happens, and it's it's strange because it's just this conflation of tourism and culture and the wild and the non-wild, the domesticated, and and it's super complicated, and there's just all these different sort of things pinging off of each other, and blessings and curses, and it's it's eye-opening, and sometimes it's really amazing, and sometimes it's super depressing, and it's a lot.
Yes, it does sound a lot. You in your performance, you were also talking, well, for the title of this talk, you've mentioned two particular elephants, Jojo and Hero, and I wondered if you wanted to speak particularly about those two next, their stories.
Sure. Well, a lot of this, a lot of the thinking around this unreliable bestiary project is like the idea of, well, why are we talking about elephants? They don't live here. And it's like, well, actually, there's plenty of elephants that live here, and sort of looking at different elephants, in for me specifically in the Midwest, and sort of talking about, like, well, not only the Midwest, but also, and not even captive, if you go back 3,000, 4,000 years, and you've got mammoths, you've got mastodons, so there is this history. It's a long history, but then also talking about circuses and zoos and Barnum and Bailey, and just all the different sorts of levels of spectacle and husbandry. It's just, and so a lot of the circus stories are really, um, I'm sure there's plenty of good stories, and there's so many bad stories, and just starting to scratch the surface of different ways that anim elephants just kind of lost their temper, and then they paid for it. And so there was one talk on campus that it was like Marco Polo, Freud, and the uncanny. And I'm like, oh my God, there's got to be some elephants wrapped up in there somehow. So I went to that, and 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 it was, yeah, it was strange and great, and those three things coming together sound pretty good. But afterwards, this friend of mine, David Hayes, I was telling him why I was there, and he was like, and he's literally, my family was circus people. I'm kind of like, what? And under his bed, he had this letter from something that happened in 1916. And there was an elephant named Hero that at the time was called um, well, I've got a video of it that I could show you. Yeah, this is like 10 minutes.
Yeah, show it. Please show us.
Yeah, okay. So I will do that. Um,
You should be able to share the screen.
yes, it's
And
optimistic.
and the button that says share audio as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I
was
always forget that bit and then expect that people can hear something and they can't.
right. So for everybody there, I've got about 15 minutes worth of stuff to show you all. This is Hero, since we're talking about Hero, and it's 10 minutes, and this is huh. I'm gonna flip it around. Okay. I'm gonna show you like 3 minutes of the original show. So you get a sense of the scale and the strangeness of the thing. And then I'm gonna show you the hero video. And the hero video were parts that were used on these big giant screens. So you could get an idea of how you were seeing this. Is that cool? Izzy, that feel all right?
Yeah, that feels all right. Is it your show? This is
Yeah.
of your show.
Yeah, yeah,
Wonderful.
yeah. So this is we did Elephant 2010, so I'm a much younger person in this picture. And I know you guys are you really worry about that. So
I
uh
was a much younger person then. I was fresh and foxy and
oh,
really
well
quite
done.
lovely. Yeah, yeah, it's that's all gone.
All right. So, oh, let's see. Where is it? Oops, I know what I did. Oops. Sorry, hang on. There.
It's always a delicate procedure. It's Zoom surgery.
Okay. And then I want to bring this up here. All right. So everybody, this has got sound. So if you're not hearing it, God bless you. We'll figure something out, I guess. So here we go.
The elephant for the hour. Next.
Funding for Larry Stone has been provided by the following.
1903. Edison electrocuted an elephant named Topsy in Coney Island.
You're gonna go here.
1916, bad year for elephants in the United States. You go down in South Dakota. The good people of Irwin, Tennessee didn't have big enough guns or enough electricity, so they lynched an elephant named Mary. Hung her with a railroad derrick.
I mean, come on, there haven't been elephants on the Great Plains in North America for, what, like 4,000 years? See, that's the thing. We were here. We were here. I got people buried all over. We got mammoths in Nebraska, South Dakota, all the way out to Pennsylvania. We used to be here. So I was alone. Well, maybe I got the feeling I was with family. And maybe I was thinking, it's a good day to die. My dad told me that for him, raising kids was like training golden retrievers. Today, there's a couple of schools of thought about raising dogs. You have the owners that have the collars where the slightest tug on the leash digs 3-inch spikes into the neck of the dog. Then you have the owners that have read the book written by dog training monks. All positive reinforcement, all love, because dog backwards is God. So I'm thinking that training an elephant is like training golden retrievers. Now, I've heard that if you take a baby elephant, you chain it to a heavy, sturdy stake, the baby's helpless, can't do anything. But then it grows up, it gets big and strong. There aren't any stakes that could hold an elephant. But the elephant is absolutely convinced it can't do anything about the stake of the chain, because that's what it learned as a baby, and an elephant never forgets. While the mahout provides the beatings, the mahout also provides the sweet bananas, the sugar cane, the mud, the baths. The mahout provides everything. Everything, 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 heaven and hell. You, the mahout in training, you put your hands up over your head. You put your right hand on top of the right ear, your left hand on the gray wrinkly wall. Grab a handful of elephant skin. It's like heavy padded canvas. Your elephant lifts his right foot. You put your foot on the raised right knee. 1, 2, 3, hop. You push down with your right foot. Your elephant boosts you up. You pull on the right ear, the right shoulder, swing your left leg up and over. You are on an elephant.
So that was a chunk just to give you guys a sense of like the context of this thing, of this performance. So if so showing a little bit more is cool. Yes.
It's incredible. You can just see how much has gone into it. All the people, there's that huge elephant. It's like the big famous war horse show in London
Yeah, yeah.
with the huge mechanical horse. I mean, it's just a phenomenal and huge project to have put together.
Yeah, and that was part of the reason why we did it in that space was because to echo the sort of like the size of the creature, but also kind of like get into stuff about, a long time ago, well, actually not that long ago, into the 1920s, there was certain kingdoms in what is now India. There was just where they would lather up their prize elephants with ghee, with butter, and then they would have the elephants wrestle and they'd wrap them with butter so they couldn't get a hold of them. And the and so it this site, this stock pavilion, is this place that's been here since 1913. And sometimes you walk in there and there'll literally be cows chewing their cud because it's a big ag school here. And so it's echoing that. It's echoing the sort of 4-H thing. And it's also echoing a kind of martialness. So elephants for a while were kind of like weapons of mass destruction. And so if you had an elephant, if you had a whole army of elephants, your army was supposed to be very strong. Um, and so, yeah, a lot of these shows are just packed with a lot of information, but they're also like kind of sewn over what ends up becoming a narrative thread that includes a lot of stories about going to meet the animals that are part of it, but also kind of talking to people who deal with them all the time. And a lot of these things end up becoming about the people and the animals, and also ends up becoming more and more. It's becoming about the interconnections, about the environment, their habitat, and how everything, including us, we're all part of it. We're all connected to this. And so go ahead.
I just noticed that both Kim and Sue have put into the chat that they'd like to be able to get links to any of the video material that's publicly available. So when you play the next video, if you have a moment to type into the chat anything that you can sort of pass on to link for people, that would be great.
Yeah, I'll do that. So why don't we look at that next thing? So this is what I'm going to show you all now is just a couple of excerpts that would be on those big screens. And sometimes with these, when stuff is on the big screen, there's also would be different things happening on the floor of the pavilion. So just to give you a rough idea of what you might be seeing with some of these things. So Hero.
And this is Joe. This is Hero. This is Hero.
This is Hero. Yeah, I've got one last one at the end we can look at. That's a shorter one that is, and we can talk about JoJo for sure. So Hero, here we go.
In January 1916, we bought a big elephant named Hero. He was nearly 11 feet tall and weighed 10,000 pounds. He was known as the biggest elephant in captivity. They had a 100-foot round top with one-ring circus, very similar to the old show their father Hiram ran before them. Uncle Miles came in the fall of 1897 to Ortonville, Iowa, from Detroit, Michigan with his family, and had some dogs and 2 ponies that were trained. Myron Orton, my cousin, did a slack wire. Bernie Orton also was with them and did a tight wire bounding act and head balancing on trapeze, and a good performer. My brother Lawrence learned a 2-pony standing act. Al Armour was the clown, and Charlie Bell was the band leader. The show had good crowds, but the price of 10 and 20 cents was not enough to keep it on the road. The date was May 15th, 1916. The show was in Elkton, South Dakota. The weather was very bad that day, cold and snowy. We always used the big elephant to pull the stakes. Generally, he was a good worker and was well trained, but Hero was having one of his bullying spells. You chain them down during these times. Even then, they can break away and do damage. Then 2 animal men will feed them dope. This is done to keep them from going on a rampage. The snow seemed to help make the big elephant mean. The keeper was careless and did not dope him up. He thought he could handle him. After he got through pulling the stakes, they went over to the water wagon. The elephant came up against the water wagon so hard and went down across the lot so fast that the keeper had to stop and flog him. When he tried to hook his ear, the elephant dodged, and before we knew it, the animal had got up on his feet and hit the keeper. The keeper lit out 30 feet straight ahead, flat on his back. His hook 30 feet out to one side. Before the keeper could get up, the elephant was there, sliding around in the mud, trying to make a headstand on him. Hero would try to get the thick part of his trunk at about the place his tusks would be. Hero no longer had tusks. He had gored to death 2 ponies in this manner, and then he would walk on them until they were flattened out. This was what he was trying to do to the keeper. On account of the mud and the elephant sliding around, the keeper was able to get away from him and on the other side of the water wagon. The elephant thought he was under the wagon, so he ran into the side of the wagon, upsetting the whole thing, then got up on top of it and walked all over it, breaking the wagon all to pieces. I went into a hotel close by and got an automatic 12-gauge shotgun and started out to meet the elephant. A young fella named Louis Gaston from Des Moines was with the show, and he had gone uptown and got a double-barrel shotgun and was over the other side of the lot. The elephant got his head against the bandwagon and pushed it to the ground upside down. The next was the lion den with 4 young lions in it, but before he could push it off the flat, Louis Gaston had gotten up close behind a tree and took a shot at the elephant. He must have hit him in the eye and put it out, because the elephant dropped down on his knees, got up, and left town. Louis and I started after him. We would take a shot at his rump and then dodge around some house, and the elephant would go on. Louis got on a horse, and someone handed him a 25-20 rifle. By this time, the elephant had gotten out into the country. Louis rode his horse around directly in the path of the elephant, about 50 yards ahead, and got off his horse and kneeled down and took a good aim and shot the elephant square between the eyes. But it did not stop him. If anything, he gained speed. I could see the elephant was going to get him, so I hollered at Louis, "Leave that horse and run, you darned fool, run." And Louis did run, believe me, and the elephant was right after him, reaching out to get him. Louis was running in a circle, so I ran to the center of the circle and took a shot at his other eye. And just as quick as I shot, the elephant stopped running and started off in another direction. And today I believe that Louis Gaston can owe his life to that shot, because that elephant was gaining on him all the while. The elephant was going in a circle now. Both of his eyes were out. And he was going through barbed wire and board snow fences and was running against telephone poles and knocking them over. I could follow him on the horse because he took the fences with him.
Yeah. So, Hero, a lot. If you go to Elkton, which is this small farming town in South Dakota, there's this little museum that feels more like a thrift shop, and they still have elephant days there, and there's a lot of stories that come out of that community that are still kind of lingering there. Um, yeah. So that was Hero, and we kind of told that story three different times, three different ways. We had Hero at the very beginning. You saw me out there in this goofy uh Hero costume, in a sort of almost like a Larry Stone, what's his name? Charlie Rose. So like we thought of that interview as like a Charlie Rose interview with Hero the elephant come back from the dead, so the ghost of Hero. And that was one of the things, and then we were kind of mirroring Hero's story with the story about JoJo. And so my wife Jennifer and I went to the elephant sanctuary that is it's outside of Chiang Mai in northern Thailand. And elephant um Jennifer's I keep wanting to say horse. Jennifer's elephant was named Wana Lee. She was a young female elephant, and the mahouts really liked the personalities of each individual, and they would go on, even though they couldn't speak English. I couldn't speak Thai, and but you could just tell that like the way they were describing their different elephants and the personalities in different elephants. And Wannalee was somebody who just didn't really have very much attention for anything and just wanted to eat sugarcane, and Jojo was, they talked about Jojo being a leader, and Jojo was about 20 years old, male, and usually a lot of these places they won't take in a male elephant because for a lot of cultures, when a male elephant goes into must, that's MUSTH, they can be very unpredictable. And so, especially if they're working with, tourism industry, they just don't want to be people getting flattened out like Hero did to his nemesis. So what ended up happening with Jojo is just before we got there, Jojo, Sawang, Jojo's mahout, had I don't know if he had a doctor appointment or something, but he had to go in. He had to go somewhere. And Jojo really hadn't spent very much time at all without Sawang being around. And so they had a stand-in for Sawang, and the guy was not super comfortable with Jojo. And at a certain point, I don't know what happened, but Jojo took off running. And apparently what an elephant will do if they have something on their back that they don't want on their back, they're going to look for tree limbs to try to scrape off whatever's on their back, this being a person. And so some elephants, they don't do this. Other elephants, they do, but they have what they call an ankh. You see them in Egyptian drawings and stuff, but it's a bull hook, and it's metal. It's a weapon, and so this guy on Jojo was panicked. Jojo's running really hard, really fast, and the guy just starts hammering Jojo with the ankh, and he's going at one particular place, and so finally they got the guy off Jojo, they tranquilized him, and they just kept him tranquilized until Sawang got back. And at that point, the wound with Jojo was big and deep, and they were treating it. Sawang specifically was treating it over a couple of weeks, and it got infected. And by the time we got there, we were like, after Sawang, I was the very next person to be with Jojo during this time. And it's not like Sawang was somewhere else. He was with me on Jojo. But and we didn't hear about the story until we had been there for like 3 or 4 days, and we were only staying for 5. And there was all these things about Jojo, like taking care of, where Sawang is taking care of Jojo, like lying Jojo down. I've got footage of this where he's lying Jojo down and then really gently, there's the idea that, I've read this somewhere that, an elephant's skin is just as sensitive as ours and can feel like the bite of it can feel a mosquito landing on its skin. So it's not like some big tough whatever. So anyway, this infection where the wound was is literally as big as a grapefruit, big as a softball, just filled with pus. And so Sawang lays Jojo down, and he's squeezing the pus out of Jojo's wound so he can treat it with antibiotics. And you can see Jojo literally wince, but he's holding still because he trusts Sawang, and gets all the pus out, treats it with the antibiotics, kind of dresses the wound, and then back on his feet. And there I am back up on him. And but one of the things that happens at this particular place is that you'll get busloads of school kids that'll come in to go to the elephant show. And the elephant show is other tourists like me. So we weren't even there for 30 minutes before we were on JoJo and Wannalee in this elephant show. And so like within 30 minutes, and this is a testament to JoJo, and you know, you hear about horses being able to keep somebody on them if they're losing balance or something. So within the 30 minutes, I am on JoJo, and JoJo is doing that thing I was just talking about. It's like a log that is probably a foot and a half off the ground, and he is balancing on the log, and I'm just like, I don't know what I'm doing. And then there's doing these different things, and Sawang is, you know, giving commands, and there's like a really long list of commands that the elephants understand. And then there's kids in the audience just watching this whole thing happen. So one time we had gone out. The elephants really love to go in the lake, so we took them in the lake. They're bathing, we're getting soaked, and then come out of the lake. And then we were waiting to go into the ring where and this is all outdoors, and waiting to get in the ring for the audience. And so we're all kind of on the road, kind of packed together. And so it's like you're on the elephant, kind of have your legs are kind of tucked behind their ear. And but this is like the whole herd was there, and all the aunties and all the other elephants, mostly female elephants, were all really concerned about him, all really concerned with Jojo. And so they were all reaching in with their trunks to sniff specifically where the wound was. And they were all, one of the things about elephants, tigers, lions, and whales is they all have this thing called infrasound, which is this really low, deep thing that is way outside of our actually hearing. But Katie Payne, who is an elephant worker, scientist, she discovered this whole thing about this low, 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 low sound that you can feel in your body. She discovered when she was working at the Portland Zoo, and she was leaning up against a cement wall, and the wall all of a sudden was vibrating. And it reminded her of being in church where she grew up, where you're playing the really deep low note of a huge organ. And so she's like, she made a recording, sped it up, and it's like, there it was. And so it was the first sort of introduction to infrasound with elephants. But you could feel that sitting on JoJo. You could feel the rumbling of all the different folks kind of talking and coming in like really high notes, and it was just pressing in on him. And you could really feel the love of the group around JoJo. And so it's just, it's that weird thing of trying to in some ways, you hear about different sorts of tests done on human beings that are in prison. So the difference between a domesticated elephant and learning things from a domesticated animal and then a wild animal, they're almost like different beings, of like what's possible when the imagination of like needing to feed, needing, all the needs of the wild animal not being provided, and how clever they can be about getting at some of this stuff. Um, you know, it can be a really different thing. And uh I guess I ran out of that train. That was a long train.
With Jojo, and in that situation, and I know for the first few days you didn't know about the bullhook thing.
Yeah.
But how did it feel to be sort of like involved in something where there is this process that some people might regard as a form of exploitation or a form of cruelty? How did it feel to sort of like think, well, here I am being, there is this complicity here?
Yeah, I mean, I talk about that some in the show, and it was, probably not the best thing. And right now, with knowing what I know, I probably wouldn't do it. There's a
Mm.
another elephant sanctuary that's closer to Chiang Mai, and you can find her on Instagram, and it's it's a woman who has all the elephants there, taking care of them, and but nobody's riding them, nobody's on them, and so it's yeah, I'm not. It's a combination of a bunch of things, It's like I said, it's complicated, and I'm not trying to excuse myself. But on the other hand, I'm really glad I had the experience. And it's also like one of the things towards the end, um, the last day was going out and Jojo, like each night they will chain it's just like putting a dog out in the backyard with a chain, at night. So basically Jojo had his chain around this tree, and then basically they'll just kind of eat everything around the thing. But Jojo was so strong, he just pulled the tree down. And so you get the chain off them, you wrap the chain up, you put it on their neck, and then you go off and walking for the rest of the day, or not rest of the day, but just basically till lunch. But at a certain point, I just kind of like was asking Sawang, would it be okay if I videotaped myself touching JoJo, And so like, and my hands are super muddy, and so there's just wanting to kind of like stroke his trunk and, the side of his face. But you could see there were moments where you could see Sawang and I'm forgetting Jennifer Wanaley's Mahood, but you could see them. There's this tension that comes in where it's just sort of like, these are big animals that sometimes will run out of patience. And so you could see him just kind of like, is this all right? Is this okay? And him, and this is also just right after Jojo had, a couple of weeks after he had come out of this trauma. And so it was like, um, it would also happen another time where we passed another elephant out in the forest that had been was old, was in their 70s, and wasn't chained anymore. And when we were passing them, you could just feel the mahouts tense up because of this moment where there was an unknown element, And
Mhm.
so
As someone who,
yeah,
as
go ahead.
someone who's sort of spent your life knowing or being in company with other animals, when you were there with Jojo, what feeling did you have about him as a person? It sounds you as if you did feel a lot, and I'd just like to sort of explore that with you.
Um, yeah, there was moments where he was just moving through the forest, and um where you're just feeling his hunger and his kind of like happiness to be eating, And so you would just be going, and like his trunk is going over here, grabbing this, putting it in his mouth, going over here, grabbing that, pulling it into his mouth. And it was like this going up this kind of big hill for quite a while. And it's just the sound is just, it's just crunching and ripping and just really, but really you could just feel the satisfaction, and really just kind of like he had, it was something he had to get done. But then
Mhm.
there's other moments where I was with Sawang where he was like, it really felt like, it's almost sort of like what you hear with about working dogs, they need to work, they want to work, so the idea of like, and this is just what I've heard. I don't, maybe there's people in the group that would disagree with me. I'm just sort of like where, a shepherd or Australian, shepherd is like needs
Border
to.
collies
Yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, working with sheep, and just like the sort of like satisfaction they feel in kind of like moving the sheep and moving them over here, and then just kind of like the satisfaction of doing a good job, And so there's one point with Swang, he was just like, okay, here we go. And Jojo, we went up. I'm sure it wasn't vertical, but it was almost a vertical cliff. It was like, and it was muddy, and Jojo was using his feet, his legs, but also his trunk to pull him and us up this thing. So it's kind of like you're literally kind of hanging onto this as this huge animal is like pulling up the thing. And by the time we got to the top, Wong is like, what do you think of that? I mean, he doesn't speak English at all, but it's just this sort of like, wow. And so it's in some ways it just felt like, and I don't know how much, I mean, the whole anthropomorphism thing, it's kind of like, it seems like there's some times where it's really important to use it,
Yeah.
because I feel like otherwise, if you don't, for most people, they're not going to be able to empathize with all kinds of living things if you don't kind of like put them in, some sort of cartoon hat and coat.
Well, this one of my two cats, he'll only play with something, he likes to play with something, but he gets scared of the things. And also he gets bored of it if I don't praise him actively after each time that he's caught the something. So I have to, oh, aren't you clever? Well done. And at that point, there is this, my other cat, if he's chasing something, he will just chase it and then, scrabble around my legs and climb up me. He gets really excited by it. But this one needs to have the sort of like reaffirmation that, yeah, you're doing it right. Yeah, you're doing it right. And there is this sort of, interesting element to the way that we all respond to having done something, and our own sort of like how certain we are in our own knowledge of having done it right.
Right.
And I think, and certainly with these two, I certainly get the feeling that they respond differently to that. And I would, at the top of that hill, there's Swang sort of, what do you think of that? Did you feel Jojo going, no, what do you think of that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
And if you don't mind, I've got another 2-minute clip that is dovetailing cats and elephants and everything that you're saying. So it's not that long. Let me see. I think it's this one. Yes. Okay, here we go.
My elephant's name is Jojo. He is 20. He is huge. His mahout is named Sawang. The days would start early. We'd carry sugarcane out to Jojo. Suwati grab Jojo! Jojo would shuffle to meet us with his shackled front legs. Sawang would then give him the command to start gathering the chain. With his trunk, Jojo would pull the train as far to the right as he could. Then he'd do it again. He'd do this over and over till all the chain was gathered in a pile. Then I would gather a fistful of chain and heave it over Jojo's neck. This is like shot putting 20 pounds of chain all over its 9-foot-tall neck. It took 5 or 6 heavings of chain to get it all up and over. There was a very specific protocol. I didn't have a clue. Jojo knew it. One morning, I gathered my first fistful of chain, and Jojo unleashed gallons and gallons of urine onto the pile of chain. Well, you know what? I didn't care. You see, when you leave your cat alone all weekend and you come home to find your pillows sopping with cat piss, it's not a coincidence. You probably deserved it. So I happily gathered the elephant piss chain into my lily white hands. I happily heaved the chain over Jojo's neck. I struggled onto his back, sat on the chain, elephant piss soaking into my skin. Never mind the fact that Jojo spent every night of his life shackled, hopping around like he was maximum security. The chain thing, for me, was all about incompetence. You see, I wanted it to come naturally to me. I wanted to impress Sawang somehow with being something other than a cadaverously white bald man from the United States buying an experience. I wanted to tap into some inner Thai cowboy that could spring onto Jojo's back from a standing position, find the snake marks in the dust, speak to animals. But this did not happen.
Uncle Miles came in the fall of 1890.
Yeah, so it feels so there was definitely some white man guilt going on there, and you know, I suppose that it's kind of like having my cake and eating it too by doing this show about it, but I was trying to get at some of the complications in the show of that whole thing of like complicity and um yeah, and it's like it, but the thing is like at this point, most of the like the different sorts of things that I'm doing now have not really, it would definitely be, you know, like for the tiger show, you know, I was in India for a conference and I went down to one of the national parks where they have tigers and I spent a week there going out twice a day looking for tigers, didn't see a single tiger. And so that became part of the show too, you know, of like not seeing the animal, not petting the animal, not, you know, it's just sort of like the rarity of some of these creatures and how they are but they're still taking a huge part of our childhood, of our imaginations, and how the difference of what we know about from a cartoon tiger as opposed to the real thing. It's like they can just do amazing things that you really can't believe until you see it on some, you know, camera trap or whatever it's going to be. And so I think that's another part of it is like this whole project ends up becoming a kind of the possibility of it becoming kind of a memorial to these creatures that are really on the brink, you know, and it's mostly about them being on the brink because they don't have there's nowhere for them to live anymore. You know, the habitat is just gone. So and so the sort of the failure of representation, of not being able to properly represent them, or if you do, it's going to be in some choppy sort of form. Yeah.
You mentioning tigers just sprung a whole load of things into my mind that are not relevant for a face-to-face with elephants conversation. But let me sort of open up the conversation to our attendees. I don't know if any of you have a particular question for Deke before I sort of segue into tigers. No, I'm not going to segue into tigers. I'm sure some of you must have queries or questions, and I know that that Kim and Sue still want to find out about those videos, if possible.
I'll do that right now. It's a Vimeo page that's got a lot of bestiary things on there, so it's not really specific elephant things, but there's a bunch of elephant things in there and other things from the bigger project.
Having looked at various animals now, have you gained an impression about the particular differences between and looking specifically at elephants, that that elephants they've all got these stories of human supremacy leading to sort of horrendous treatment, extirpation, habitat loss. Is there something that really stands out for you as distinct about the elephant case?
Well, I guess probably because because of that whole mahout
Yeah,
relation,
yeah.
not just not just in India, but also, I remember going to see when I was at school in Colorado. We went down to Denver when the circus was coming to town, and they did that thing back then where it's like, the train comes in and then they march the whole circus to wherever the venue is. And all the mahouts were speaking Hindi. They were speaking, they weren't speaking English to their mahouts, they were speaking Hindi. And so it was like, uh, and so that relationship and the one-on-oneness, it seems like the stories, just like how everybody's got stories about their dogs or their cats, it feels like the the constant contact. It seems like there's a lot of rich stories in that relationship,
Mm.
that you might not find very many of those with cetaceans, because
Mhm.
and the cetacean thing is like whales and dolphins. It's like it's only really been, I mean, there was plenty of research, but it wasn't until you started getting these breaks in technology where you're able to actually, like, before the, 1990s or whatever, you had people talking about, like, studying whales was the equivalent of, like, somebody studying giraffes on the, you know, studying giraffes in Africa in a place where there's a fog bank that's 17 feet high, and you're on a rowboat that's on the top of the fog bank, and every once in a while a giraffe's nose comes up and breathes and goes down, and that's all they knew, because and so now with cameras and with uh all kinds of other sort of different kinds of technology, with like sonic being able to listen. They're getting a lot more information about cetaceans and how they live. And so I think that's just happening. That's just been happening over the last 25 years, um, which is really different than elephants, where people are really living, the domesticated elephants, people are really living close with them. And then with, like it or not, the hunting civilizations know so much about the creatures that they're living with, and that are feeding them, so it's and so with hunting cultures dying out, and with the habitats shrinking, and so the wild animal population is just shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. So it's this moment where there's all kinds of information coming in, all kinds of like raw data, because of different ways of recording the natural world. But the natural world is disappearing at the expense of building these machines that can, like AI, just sucking up entire water tables, So
That
it's
is such a good point. There is this parallel, this kind of demonic parallel happening, more and
yeah,
more information and less to know about.
right.
And I was in the way that you have presented elephant. I mean, that the story of Hero in that film was devastating. I mean, it was just, I mean, I've read the story in like Jason Herbal's book. And so, you know, however familiar these things are to you, the presentation in that was just heartbreaking. How have audiences reacted? How have the students that have been involved in these projects, that as you know, as extras in the presentations, how have they been impacted by the research, by the stories?
Um, well, the people that are working on the shows with me, close collaborators. I mean, most of these shows are directed by my wife, Jennifer, who is a dancer, choreographer, and then we have pretty tight group that comes in and out of working with us. And sometimes there's students and sometimes there's people that we rely on. And but we're, you know, as I said, all of these projects take about 3 years. This last one, Station, took 4 because of the pandemic. And 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 so it's not like, oh, we're gonna do 5 shows this year. It's all like, and a lot of these people, aside from the dancers, they're not necessarily trained performers. I mean, the designers are very trained. But I think it depends on who you're talking to. You know, they're probably performance or theater people first, and then, oh, it's this thing about different animals, you know. So I know that they're affected by it. But I think what ends up happening with these things is there's often so many people working on them. It ends up kind of forming this community just in building the thing. And that community, there's also like, even, well, it's not a, I don't know, the two towns, Urbana and Champaign, the total population is probably around 180, 200,000. So it's not small. Um, but these shows have got kind of a following now. And so when we do them, we get people coming to watch. And so some of it depends on the show. You know, when we did Elephant, we had people coming up to me and I pardon the metaphor, but it was like they had just had sex. They were just flush. They were just so open to being in the room, and like they were so excited about the project, you know. It was really physical, really unusual, and all of these things we do it for free. You know, we raise enough money so we open it up to the public. You don't need a ticket. Except for some of the smaller ones where you need a ticket, you just don't have to pay for it. Um, so I,
But didn't they cry?
yes, there was some crying. Sure, there's crying, but there's also a lot of humor in these. I mean,
Yes,
I,
yes.
I've seeing some of your faces. I was like, oh, okay. Maybe I should have given a heads up about this, but but there is a lot of humor involved, and so I think it's kind of that. Some of it is just using this medium, you know, well, granted, it's interdisciplinary, a lot of things going
Yeah.
on, um, to use kind of different textures, use different sorts of emotions to try to get at information that is, um, talking about history. The idea of history is science, sort of like Pliny the Elder talking about elephants and dragons, in 400 AD. And it's like, well, okay, but we don't really have the dragons, It's so how science changes over time and how what's fact changes over time, and so the unreliable bestiary has been about kind of like myth and science and our understanding, our imagination, our dreams about how these creatures fit within our dreams. And it also, I guess it's, with this current administration and just the all of a sudden the unmooring of truth to actual events. It's that playing around with this is fact, this is not fact. I'm feeling I need to be a lot more careful with it. I need to be really clear about some of the things, even though a lot of art strategy and writing strategy is kind of like providing moments of doubt for an audience to kind of like, what is that? And then let people think about that. So, um, I, so it's kind of like, I guess in some ways, it's like being a teacher, which I am, where it's kind of like you think maybe something is going out there, that you dropped a pebble in the pond and things are rippling, but you don't necessarily know,
Well, what it makes me think of is quite a lot of writers at the moment who are sort of in the environmental space are talking about the increased importance of, it's not that we don't need more information, we need a better story.
Yeah.
And to me, what you're doing there is, it's not just about the better story, but it's, as you said, it's multidisciplinary. It uses all these different elements, and I think drawing the emotions. I mean, the raw pain. I mean, to be fair, in that hero film, that didn't really involve much humor. The film,
No,
that bit,
Yeah.
but I appreciate that was sort of like on in the background, and a lot of the rest of the it's a nice day to die. It's there's a lot of humor in the rest of the show, but that's exactly the point: bringing humor as well as pain into something in a mixture that isn't conventionally expected, can therefore create a bigger impact on people and encourage that process of thinking, that process of reimagining far more effectively than something that's just sort of like, quite straight.
Right, absolutely. And I think a thing, and when we're talking about something like, I guess with the elephant show, we only did it 5 nights, because it's like renting all that video stuff was really expensive. And so some of these things, it takes a lot of fundraising. And so you don't really get to do them that much. With cetacean, I guess with elephant, we had about 2,000 people come to it over the 5 nights. That's wrong. It's more like 1,200. And then with cetacean, it was we were using much more of the space, and we had like, I guess that would be like 2,500. We had about 500 people a night, which is, for me, that's like, oh my God, that's amazing. That's incredible. I've been, doing shows in San Francisco and New York where you just have 10 or 5 in the audience. It's like, well, 500, amazing. That's incredible. But compared to numbers that you might see on social media where people are scoffing at somebody that only has 10,000 followers or whatever, it's like the the spread, the distribution of the ideas or the thing is you don't have the numbers, but at the same time, it's just sort of like, well, it's probably maybe it's more of a quality sort of like connection, and also the idea of, and people can also kind of like start wagging their fingers at me a little bit about preaching to the choir, and I'm like, I think the choir needs preaching too. I'm not so worried about that. I feel like the way things are with climate and you know uh, endangered creatures and species, it just feels like there's never going to be a silver bullet. It's always going to be, it's kind of even small voices, even small local voices are important at this point, and you never really know who's going to connect with a particular sort of thing. So I really it and it's also that thing of like all of us, I imagine it's this feeling like, what can one person do? What can I do? And so it just feels like no, we all need to do something, even if it's small, you know? And so just, even if it's in your own community, which, you know, we're having so much problem in the States with like the bigger, wider, how do we talk to each other sort of thing. But I think it's a lot easier to talk about something if you're all in a local community, you know? And so just trying to like, well, let's talk about it on that level. So I'm proud of the things. I'm glad people come to see this. And like we were talking about, Izzy, like sometimes we make these smaller versions, translations of the big thing, and we go on these tours to small places, and that can be really satisfying.
We all do need to make sure that we use our voices. Thank you so much, Deke. We've taken nearly an hour and a half of your time today, so I'm so grateful for that, and I really appreciate you sharing the videos with us and sharing your thoughts with us. Thank you so much, and I will pass over to Olivia to close us off.
Before you do that, hi Deke, it's Gay.
Hey, Gay, how are you?
I have to insert, nice to see you. Yeah, we met years ago when I think my elephant stuff first came out.
Yep.
I was so impressed. I don't know whether we have time, but if you could, I don't know whether you can show it now or you could at least provide the link, the polar bear thing that you did. I did want to make a comment on, I think instead of the word of domestication is really bicultural. In my opinion, there is no domesticated elephant, even in India and Thailand. What really strikes me is how extraordinary, and you can look at it as you have as well, as how extraordinary the impetus for prosociality, for empathy, for connection that elephants and other animals have, despite. Now, again, as you showed with Hero, you know, I mean, the quote unquote keeper, the mahout, becomes God. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, you know, that life and death is in the thread of that individual. And I think it's a really important thing. I've written about it in Thailand. There's some organizations that are pro-mahout, if you want to call it that they're really trying to help with the indigenous, etc. And you know, that in a certain place in Thailand, or I think it's in Thailand, where, you know, they're more quote unquote gentle. However, when you look at it, they still rip the baby away from the mother.
Yeah.
And they may not have the brutality of the chaining and the beating and putting the ankus, which is very, very sharp, up the anus of an elephant baby, which is a practice. But they are ripping away a baby from the mother to work, to go and to do this. And this is a perpetuation of a human culture that if you looked at it from the perspective of taking away the species differences, would be outlawed, or at least it would be looked down on in terms of the kinds of torture. And so I think that we're at a point also as a species, it's a really good pause moment to say, well, yeah, there's colonialism and all these things, but there's some very unhealthy traits. It's not just in Thailand, it's here, it's whatever. And so we have to look at really what is the perpetuation of that human culture. You know, yes, you know, right now I'm white, I'm in here and da-da-da, I'm talking about da-da-da colonization. But I think we need to move away. We recognize that, and yet at the same time be, you know, cogent enough to say this is not something that we want to perpetuate. And I think in some ways, when there are these what I call somewhat apologist types of approaches, in that particular case, I'm not talking about you, in that particular case, is it's another kind of colonization. It's another kind of subjugation. So that to me is very important. And so I think that the domestication is should be really bicultural, like the rabbits. You know, to me, they're bicultural. Some of them like to be more with rabbits, and sometimes with humans, it's very individual in that way. And when an elephant, you know, goes through, is captured in the wild, or even born in captivity, and then goes back to quote unquote nature, in general, at least this is what I have read and seen and experienced, there is a kind of amazing quote unquote recovery. Not that
Yeah.
everything's hunky-dory. And so I think we have to say, what is that spark of connection? And how do we, as humans, how can we bring ourselves, our minds, our bodies, our ethics into alignment with, say, in this case, with elephants that are so magnanimous in terms of forgiving, even though elephants don't forget. So that's kind of my little kind of thing on that. And also on anthropomorphism is that anthropomorphism, and you heard this ad nauseum from me, is that from a purely scientific perspective, we all have the same brains. Worms have the same brains. That's neuroscience runs on that model. So when we talk about anthropocentrism, we can basically see, meaning they all have, from that very conservative way of heuristic of neuroscience, all animals have, and trees, different mechanisms, have the same capacities that we do for all the things that we think is so groovy, like thinking, feeling, consciousness, and trauma. So the anthropomorphism then is really kind of a tool, So like I relate to you because I'm human, because I'm assuming some things, and yet at the same time I have to hold back my own shit, my own projections of making assumptions about you. So anthropomorphism is positive if it's used as a tool for insight, like I'm using with you. I'm having certain kinds of assumptions because both you and I, blah, blah, blah. And yet at the same time, I have to be careful of, okay, well, what's your stuff that's going on? In other words, to not obliterate. So those are just a couple of comments. But I do think what you do in your work is you dislodge and untether, whether it's in these kind of surreal types of things or whatever. And I think that's very powerful, is that you untether the storyline, you untether the mind. And in that way, it is a very liberatory thing for the humans who get caught in these master narratives. So thank you for that. And the polar bear is just phenomenal. It's my favorite. So, I did want to tell you for the cetacean. Are you still in the works of the cetacean stuff?
Well, it's we just got done with a short tour of it, and we got a couple of other ones coming up. But so yeah, we're still working on it. I mean, it's like as far as like more information for the show goes, no, we're not.
Okay. I was going to say there's a fellow that's in my Carnivore Mind book. He's in a couple chapters. He's a free diver and he's a professional photographer. And he's had some in the Carnivore Minds book. In the last chapter, he talks about an experience. He lives off the Azores, where he was brought into the circle of sperm whales who a young baby was just being birthed. So it may not want information, but it is, a different perspective and quite an extraordinary description. So his name is Fred Bowie. He's Belgian and lives in the Azores.
Amazing. Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Gray. It's great to see you again. And thanks all of you for inviting me and spending the time. I really appreciate it. I like bicultural a lot. I'll use that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deke. This has been amazing and so informative and just incredible. So thank you so much. It's lovely to meet you and to hear from you. This has been wonderful. And thank you to everybody for joining us today and sharing your Friday with us. Our next Living One gathering will be 1 week from today on Friday, November 21st at 10 a.m. Pacific time, when we will be joined by Michelle Franco, who is here today and a member of the Stewardship Council here at Kerulos. And she'll be telling us about being sanctuary fundamentals. So we're looking forward to that, and we hope to see all of you there in a week. And Deke, thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Take good care, everybody. Have a good weekend.